So psychosensory intervention is a way of considering holism, the holistic intervention that puts together, in a sense, human occupation. At the time when I described what brought me to this thinking, I was thinking predominantly only about sensory. And today, we understand the neurobiology of sensory processing, of trauma, and we see that the whole brain is involved, that sensory systems are affected by trauma. But sensation, cognition, emotion, they interface collectively to create what I call a compressed experience of one's life and one's trauma, and that any path into the nervous system is going to require all of these things. How we make sense of our experiences cognitively, how we reorganize and rewire attachment experiences, event traumas. And so psychosensory puts these pieces together as a framework that pulls in many facets of thought processes that help us as occupational therapists guide our detective work in the approach that we're going to have in the client in front of us, irrespective of where they are in their lifespan, from infancy to geriatrics. So here is the model, in a sense, in a very simplistic form. Often we like things in a toolbox. And unfortunately, especially as complexity increases, it is not a linear process, but one that requires that we bring out a magnifying glass and look at many different holistic facets simultaneously. And so the concept that helps me represent that idea is a bicycle wheel, and that each spoke represents an equal contributing variable to how we enter into both our analysis but also our intervention. And we know that when a spoke is bent on a wheel, that wheel doesn't turn so well. And so each particular place that we enter in to the life of a person in front of us, if one piece is struggling, it affects the holism of the process. So in our therapy, the question that I ask to the client, which sometimes is the family, sometimes it's the teacher, sometimes it's a carer, sometimes it's the person themselves. My assessment is guided by one question. What would you like to be easier for you? And that question starts me on this sensing into them. And in that question, I have an a la carte menu of options of simultaneous integrated interventions that I can use all at once. And they're represented here. Regulation through relationship. Our company called Relationship Matters is obviously my bias that this is one of our greatest gifts in how we show up, in our capacity to be with people, is the foundational grounding lightning rod of where regulation can be adjusted in its process, moment by moment. And when I reflect back on Daniel, what I would have done differently in that sensory gym is I would have had a relationship first. I would have climbed that climbing wall with him. I would have titrated it moment by moment. I would have narrated. I would have said, I notice that your body is changing. I'm seeing that your shoulders are softer. I'm noticing that your breathing is changing, even if it didn't land as making any sense. That moment by moment attunement would have been more attenuated in my process at the time. And that's what I call regulation through relationship. We are the tool. And so our self-awareness, our capacity to know ourselves and to continuously evolve as our own being is changing our neurobiology as to how we're going to be the person that comes into the life of another. Our use of play, and play from a psychotherapeutic perspective, having a therapeutic frame of reference that guides you in how you interpret play, interpret art, interpret the modalities as contributing to the mental health and well-being of the person in front of you. And so these components contribute. The body. One of my backgrounds is in neurodevelopmental treatment, and so the biomechanical aspects of movement and how movement shows up in our relational aspects, in our mental health. We're going to talk about this today. Sensory-based interventions, things you know very well, and our psychotherapeutic use of self. The language that we use, the reflective capacity that we give back to the client, the curiosities that we offer clients to have about themselves as they become more and more present to their experience. This is the holism of the integrated skills that we have in our OT background that give us a distinct, I say it with pride, advantage of how we support people in their health and well-being, irrespective of their diagnosis.